All right, first video for this unit is about simplifying rational expressions. And in order to be able to correctly do this entire unit, we need to understand the restrictions. So if you remember restrictions from the radical unit, you remember that you could not have a negative number underneath the square root. Well, now we're doing a rational unit. And a rational unit, what that word rational means is there's a variable in the denominator, okay? So if you look, all of these expressions have variables in the denominator. So what we are going to do is we need to state what is not allowed, things that are not permissible. So if I plugged x equals 3 into this question right here, I would have -4 over 0. And if you put -4 over 0 in your calculator is going to give you error, does not exist, can't work. If we look at this one, if we put 3 in here, I would get the same thing. I'd get 5 over 0. And you have to be careful about this one if I plug 3 in or -3, okay? Because if I factor this guy, if I plug -3 in there, I'm also going to get 0. So I always factor rational expressions first before I state restrictions. So basically what I'm trying to explain to you is you can never divide by 0. So when you're stating restrictions of rational expressions, we would say x cannot equal 3. That would be the answer for this first guy here, and this guy here, x cannot equal plus or minus 3. So any x value that's going to make the denominator 0 is a restriction. So let's look at our examples here. Basically, all I need to say to myself is what could I plug in for x that would make the denominator 0? So for this one, it's just x cannot equal 0. What would I plug in here? X cannot equal 7. What could I plug in here? X cannot equal 3. And maybe this one's a little bit harder for you to understand, to know. So what I do, if I ever have a bracket, or even this one, some people struggle with this one. If you look at that and you don't know what would make it 0, set it equal to 0 and solve for x. And it will tell you what is the restriction. Same as here. Set the bottom equal to 0 and solve for x. So that is a restriction. And you can always check your restrictions by plugging them in, and if your calculator says does not exist, then you probably wrote your restrictions correctly. So that is how we state restrictions of rational functions.